Lean Six Sigma in education. Okay. To be honest, when I first saw that as the subject of your research paper, well, I thought, are we really talking about streamlining kids now like they're on an assembly line? But then the more I dug into it, the more I gotta say I was intrigued.
It's definitely a hot topic in education circles right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and not always for the right reasons, I bet. Like, we hear Lean Six Sigma and we think factories, right? Not exactly where we picture kids.
Yeah, there can be a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, that's fair to say. People jump to, oh no, are we tuning schools into some kind of factory? But that's really not what it's about.
And I have to admit, I was a little worried about that. But the part about making things better for students, like you were saying, about boosting their satisfaction, that really caught my eye.
Yeah, student experience is key, right? At the end of the day, it's about them, but it's also about giving teachers the tools they need, you know, to make their lives a little easier and help them be more effective.
Right, because if the teachers are drowning in paperwork and bogged down in a million different directions, the students aren't going to benefit.
Exactly.
It's about making the whole system work better. And I think that's where this whole idea of waste comes in, right? Because you use this quote in your paper that really struck me. A classroom without a system for identifying and eliminating waste is like a library where the books are arranged randomly.
Oh, I love that analogy.
It's so true, though, because who wants to try to find a book in a library where nothing makes sense?
It'd be a nightmare. And in a way, that's what it can be like in a classroom where things aren't organized, where processes aren't efficient. It makes it harder for everyone.
Right. It's like when I think back my own school days, all those times I felt like I was just spinning my wheels doing busy work instead of actually, learning. Was that waste?
Could be. It's definitely something to think about. And it brings us back to Lean Six Sigma and how these two concepts, Lean and Six Sigma, can work together.
Yeah, because they're two different things, right? It's not just one big buzzword.
Exactly. So leaning, that's all about efficiency. Think of it like, how can we do more with less? How can we streamline processes? How can we eliminate things that aren't adding value?
Okay, so cut the clutter, get to the good stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Six Sigma, on the other hand, is all about quality. It's about reducing defects, minimizing errors, making sure things are consistent.
So kind of like if lean is about making sure you're baking the right kind of cake, Six Sigma is making sure it's baked perfectly every time.
I like that. Perfect analogy. So when you combine these two concepts, Lean and Six Sigma, what you get is a really powerful framework for improving any process, really, and that includes education.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential here, but I have to ask, how does this actually look in a real classroom setting? You highlighted a case study in your research that I was super curious about. It was about a school district that used Lean Six Sigma to transition to, what was it, digital learning resources?
Oh, yeah, that one. That was
It
fascinating.
was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so they were basically trying to go paperless, right? Trying to move all their textbooks and worksheets and everything online.
Right. And I remember thinking, that seems like a logistical nightmare.
It can be, for sure.
Yeah.
But they used Lean Six Sigma principles to streamline the entire process. So first, they identified all the bottlenecks. Like they had some outdated software that was slowing everyone down. And they didn't have enough computers for all the students. And the teachers, well, they weren't really trained on how to use all the new technology effectively.
So it wasn't just a technology problem, it was a whole system problem.
Exactly. And that's where Lean Six Sigma can be so valuable because it helps you see the big picture and identify all the interconnected parts that need to work together.
So instead of just throwing technology at the problem, they actually thought about how to implement it in a way that would actually improve things.
Exactly. They analyzed the current process, identified areas for improvement, and then they came up with solutions to address those specific challenges.
And what happened? Did it work?
Well, the results were actually pretty amazing. Student engagement went up, teachers were happier, and they even saved money in the long run because they didn't have to print as much stuff anymore.
Okay, so now I'm really seeing the potential here. But I imagine it's not always smooth sailing. I mean, change is hard, right? And I know from reading your research that there can be some pushback to these kinds of initiatives.
Oh, absolutely. Implementing anything new, especially in education, comes with its own set of challenges.
So there are some speed bumps we need to watch out for. But before we get into all that, let's talk about the practical stuff. Because, I'm imagining some people listening and they're thinking, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but how do I actually do it? How do I actually put Lean Six Sigma into practice in my school?
Yeah, it can seem a little daunting at first, all those acronyms and stuff.
Exactly. So where do we even begin?
A good place to start is with DMAIC.
DMAIC, right, which stands for?
Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. It's a 5-step process for implementing Lean Six Sigma.
Right, 5 steps. Got it. But it's more than just an acronym, right? It's an actual, like, roadmap or something.
Exactly. It's a roadmap for improvement.
Okay, so walk me through it. Let's say a school is struggling with, I don't know, low graduation rates. How would they use DMAIC to address that?
Okay, so first, define. You've already done that low graduation rates. That's the problem you're trying to solve.
Right, pinpoint the issue.
Exactly. Then you move on to measure. So you need to collect data on your graduation rates. What are they now? What have they been in the past? How do they compare to other schools?
Okay, so really get a handle on the numbers.
Yep. And then you analyze that data.
Yeah.
Why are students not graduating? Is it attendance issues? Failing grades in certain subjects?
Yeah.
Something else entirely.
Interesting. So it's like detective work almost. You're looking for clues to figure out what's really going on.
Exactly. And once you understand the root causes of the problem, then you can start to brainstorm solutions. That's the improve phase.
So coming up with ways to actually fix the problem.
Right. And then finally, control. This is all about making sure those improvements stick. So you might create systems to monitor progress, make adjustments as needed, that sort of thing.
Right, because we don't want to just put a Band-Aid on it. We want to actually solve the problem for good.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's DMAIC. And it makes sense, right? It's logical. But when it comes to actually implementing these changes, there are specific tools and techniques that schools can use, right? Like one that comes to mind from your research is data-driven instruction, which I'll admit doesn't sound super exciting on the surface.
It's not the catchiest phrase, I'll grant you that.
But I'm guessing it's more interesting than it sounds. So break it down for me. What is data-driven instruction and how does it actually work in the classroom?
Sure. So at its core, data-driven instruction is about using data to inform your teaching. So instead of just teaching the way you've always taught, you're actually looking at the data to see what's working and what's not.
Okay, so data as in like test scores, grades, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But also things like attendance records, student surveys, even observations of student behavior, any information that can give you insights into how your students are learning.
Okay, so you're gathering all this information, but then what? What do you actually do with it?
Well, that's where the real magic happens. Because once you have the data, you can start to identify patterns and trends. You can see which students are struggling, in which areas, and why. And then you can use that information to tailor your instruction to meet their specific needs.
So instead of just teaching to the middle, you're actually personalizing education for each student.
Exactly. And the research on this is really compelling. Like, there was this one study you cited in your paper where they used data on reading fluency to create personalized reading interventions for struggling students.
Oh, right. And the results were pretty impressive, weren't they?
They were. Students who received the data-driven interventions made significantly greater gains in reading fluency than those who didn't.
Okay, so we're talking about real, tangible results here, not just some pie-in-the-sky theory.
Exactly. Data-driven instruction can make a real difference in the lives of students.
That's amazing. But of course, it's not just about throwing data at teachers and expecting them to magically know what to do with it. There's got to be some kind of framework for actually putting that data into practice. And I know you mentioned something in your research about ADDIE.
Yes, AD, a classic.
Which stands for?
Analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate.
Okay, 5 more steps. Got it. But how does this ADI thing actually work, and how does it connect to everything else we've been talking about? So ADIE, it's like a roadmap for using data to actually improve teaching.
Right. You got it. It's all about taking that data and turning it into action.
Okay, so let's break it down. Analyze, that's the first step. What are we analyzing here?
Well, you start by analyzing your learners and their needs. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their learning styles? You really want to get a deep understanding of who your students are.
So it's not just about the content you're teaching, it's about the students you're teaching it to.
Exactly, and that's where the design phase comes in. Once you understand your learners, you can start to design instruction that's tailored to their specific needs.
Okay, so that makes sense. You're designing the lesson, the curriculum, all of that with your students in mind.
Right. And then you have to actually create the materials, the activities, the assessments. That's the develop phase.
So that's where the rubber meets the road. You're actually putting in the work to create engaging and effective learning experiences.
Exactly. And then comes the implement phase. That's where you actually deliver the instruction. You teach the lessons, you guide the activities, you facilitate those discussions.
So you put all your hard work into action.
Exactly. But it doesn't stop there. The final step, and this is crucial, is evaluate. You need to constantly be evaluating the effectiveness of your instruction. Are the students learning? Are they engaged? Are they meeting the objectives?
Because if it's not working, you need to go back to the drawing board.
Exactly. It's a continuous cycle of improvement. Analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate, and then you start all over again.
And repeat. I'm seeing the connection to Lean Six Sigma here. It's all about continuous improvement.
Exactly. And it's a really powerful approach for education because it helps you create a learning environment that is constantly evolving and adapting to the needs of your students.
Which is what it's all about, right? The students.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's all about helping every student reach their full potential.
Well said. This has been a fascinating deep dive, and I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through all of this. I know I've learned a lot.
It's my pleasure.
And for all of you listening out there, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Lean Six Sigma in education. It might seem a bit daunting at first, but as we've heard today, it can be a powerful tool for creating a more efficient, more effective, and ultimately more student-centered learning experience for everyone. Until next time, keep those minds curious.